Hi, friends. Welcome back to my podcast. Megan Dauber here, sharing the story of me and Michael and our family and all of you, just from my perspective of what happened post cardiac arrest for Michael. And the last 3 episodes have been kind of just a more microscopic look at what has happened in the hospital. But now we're entering the next 2 weeks where he was just laying in a hospital bed, and we're kind of waiting on what comes next. So this is February 14th through February 29th. It was a leap year last year. And at the time, I didn't know how much time we would be staying in the hospital. It was just understood that he needs a different level of care next. Like, we've got to move on. So we are working towards where's he going to go next. We have a team of amazing friends of mine exploring rehab facilities, exploring the Shepherd Center. My dear beloved Caroline, she took on so much during this time in my life. She took on the finding information out about Shepherd Center, about Sheltering Arms in Richmond, the Kessler Institute, a bunch of different phenomenal rehab centers all around the country. She kind of did all the recon on that and got questions answered. And, does so-and-so work with our insurance company? Would so-and-so accept this? How much will it cost? And she was doing so much behind the scenes that I had zero capacity to do. There is absolutely no way I was functioning well enough to be the one handling this. So it was such a blessing in my life to have people like Caroline and others, and my brother continued to work with insurance, and my father did a ton too. But y'all you were seriously the hands and feet of the Lord to me, because you did the hard work working on where does Michael go next and how does this actually happen. So I was just waking up, going to hospital every day, sitting with him, coming home, trying to be a mom, and then repeat the next day. So Michael, moved from the ICU after he was extubated. He spent one more night down there in ICU, and they moved him up a couple floors to what they call the step-down unit. But Michael, he was still on a feeding tube because he was not eating. He was still getting his medication intravenously. He was still on a catheter. He was very much immobile still. So he's up in the step-down unit, but it had a bigger room. It was more spacious for visitors, and we could have more people in the room at one time in the step-down unit. And so the hospital would send in therapists to begin evaluating him. So we've got physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech and language pathology. So they're doing things like, how stable is Michael if we have him sit up? Can his core hold him up? Can he sit on the edge of bed without tipping over? Can he lift one leg? Can he lift the other leg? Can he circle his ankle? All those types of evaluations to kind of figure out how much work we were going to have to do with him. He really wasn't speaking still, but he was kind of grunting, or he started to give us one-word answers, which was a cause for celebration. But the physical therapy was eventually able to get him to sit up on his own. So that was really great. But his muscles were significantly atrophied from his time just being unconscious and laying in the bed and being, down and out with a fever for so long. He just had lost a ton of strength. So physical therapy is working on him. Occupational therapy, at that point, occupational therapy was a little bit of, I'm trying to remember the specifics that occupational therapy did with him. They didn't have as much to do. It was more like, can you hold a toothbrush? Do you know what to do if we hand you a toothbrush? What would you do with it? And now Michael, at that point in February, he didn't know what to do with it, and he really couldn't do much. And the right side of his body had major deficiencies. He is right-handed, right-footed, but his left side was definitely more dominant during this time. So you could see, he had the way he held his wrist, there was a bend in his wrist, and he couldn't move his fingers very well. It was very, very difficult to look at. And so anyway, That was occupational therapy. And the speech and language pathologist would come in and work with him on speaking and reading. And we started trying to see if he could read. And he surprised us. They had this iPad that they brought in and showed him words one at a time. And could he read it? And he was reading. So he was reading the word and saying it out loud. And there were activities where they would show him the word and he would need to point to the picture of it. And he did pretty well with that, which we were like, okay, something is making sense. There are connections happening in here. He was not recognizing me at all. I remember standing with a group of people at the foot of his bed, and someone pointed at me and said, Michael, what's her name? Who is she? And he goes, I don't know. And I remember the rest of the folks in the room, like, kind of celebrated that he said a sentence. He said 3 words in a row. He answered the question that we asked him. But I remember sitting there being like, oh, wow, you said you don't know my name. Like we're each other's persons, Michael. Like, you got to know my name. And that carried on for a while. And we wonder how his brain was healing. Did he think he was younger than he was? Like, did his memory and his healing just need time to catch up? Because he was beginning to recognize and kind of light up when his mom and his dad would walk in the room, when his brothers and his sister would come in the room. Like, it was just, you could tell there was this familiarity with them, but not with me. And even though our pictures were plastered on the wall in front of him, it didn't seem to spark anything. So he doesn't know my name. He doesn't look like he's recognizing me. I was not there one morning, but a few of my friends were, and they asked him, Michael, how old are you? And he said, 12. And in the moment, it was funny for all of them. But it did just make us think, like, wow, if you think you're 12, then yeah, it would be confusing to have people bring this woman in there and be like, this is your wife. What's her name? Do you remember her? And his brain is like, nope, I'm 12. And weeks later, he would begin to answer that question and he would say he's 18. So, I mean, maybe. And at that point, when he was 18, I was in his life. So I was like, there's hope. Maybe she's coming back. But certainly he didn't remember the kids either. He would stare at the pictures, but just taking it in, not really showing anything. It was just bizarre. So back to him being able to read. One time the speech pathologist had written my name on the whiteboard and said, read this name. Who is that? He had just read words like backpack, book, rock, church. And then she wrote my name on the whiteboard. He didn't get it. He had nothing. So she erased that. And then she wrote his name. She wrote Mike on the whiteboard. He couldn't read it. He did not respond to Mike. So she said, okay, and erased that and wrote the name Joe. He takes one look at it and he goes, oh, Joe. And I was in the room and a couple other friends. I know, Brian, you were in the room. Dean, you were in the room, and someone else was in the room with us. And we all we laughed because it was hysterical. You couldn't read Megan, Mike, but you could read Joe. Like, why? What was that? I don't know. We still don't have the answers, but this is the little progress that he's making, the baby steps, which don't often feel like baby steps. But I do remember a couple other times when one night, Travis, Michael's best friend, was in the room with me, and I was like, I'm going to try to get him to write on the whiteboard. Like, maybe his brain would work better if he's writing. So I hand him the whiteboard. I put it on his lap, and I take the dry erase marker, and I say, Michael, this is a marker. Can you hold it in your hand and draw or write with it? And I was, close to him and handed him the marker, put it in his hand, and he kind of held it in a weird way. And I gave him the instructions one more time, and he gives me a side eye and then goes, oh my God, as if he was annoyed with me. And Travis immediately was like, no, he didn't say that. There's no way he said that. And I was like, oh my goodness, Travis, that's exactly what he said. I'm annoying to him. It was, and I had good humor about it all, but between not recognizing me, not knowing my name, not being interested in my presence, me annoying him. I know one time I got to feed him pudding in one of the speech and language pathology visits. And he was like a baby, like moving away from me. And he actually said to me, "You're crazy." So, I mean, just like put yourself in my shoes for a minute. Like this is my man, like my person, my husband who I just am in love with. And here he is, not knowing who I am, not enjoying my presence, being babied in every sense of the word. Like it was a bizarre place for me to live in for a while. During these weeks, also, it was his turn to get the defibrillator implanted. And I remember that just being not a tough decision, because deep down I knew they're saying this is what's best for him. It's got to happen. Like if he were to ever have a cardiac arrest incident again, like I would want the defibrillator implanted. So I knew it had to happen. But at the same time, like I couldn't talk to him about it. Like, hey, how do you feel about having a device in you for the rest of your life? It's a little bit bigger than I thought it was going to be. It sticks out. He can feel it. It's changed the way he sleeps. Like he cannot lay on his left side anymore. And that was his preference of how he slept, was on his left side facing me. But now he doesn't, because the defibrillator is there. But yeah, we got it implanted on February 20th. The doctor was incredible. He answered all of our questions. He actually said, "Wow, I have never had anybody's family be that thorough in their questioning of the defibrillator device before." And a lot of times defibrillator patients, they're not brain injury patients. So like they know and they're able to ask questions, but I was trying to ask every possible question I could think of so that one day when Michael got better, I'd be able to answer it for him. And but I mean that hasn't happened yet. So he got the defibrillator on February 20th, and that came and went, and now he's got that. And then the rest of it was just a lot of waiting for, okay, what comes next? So we're 3 weeks in. I had made the decision to not bring our children to the hospital to see him. It was really hard to look at Michael incapacitated in this hospital setting. And I didn't like having no concept of how long this was going to be, and still holding hope that miraculously he would snap out of it and get better. I was like, I don't want my kids to have this visual memory of going in and seeing their dad this way in the hospital. It was scary. So I held to that for the boys, for Brooks and Ryland. They did not see him at all, which began to, that's a long time to not see daddy when you weren't planning on it. And knowing that daddy was in a hospital, like he wasn't on vacation, he wasn't deployed, he was in a hospital, and they knew it, and he wasn't home. And just everything else in life was so different. They knew things were not okay. So I was able to have a conversation with Carmen. She's older. She was 12 and she was really missing her daddy. So I finally was like, all right, I think I'm going to bring her in. I got advice from a lot of different people on how I should do it. And now one thing that I didn't anticipate was her coming in, and Michael was just zoned out. He was really tired. So not only is he not recognizing me very well, but if he's not recognizing me, he's not going to recognize his kids. And that's what happened. And I brought her in one afternoon, and Michael was just so groggy and so out of it that he didn't engage at all. And Carmen, she sat next to me. We sat at the bedside. And of course, I talked to him, as if he knew exactly who we were and was thrilled to see her. And she was very quiet, taking it all in. And I do remember at one point she got up and went to the corner of the room, and it looked like she was looking at all the beautiful pictures on the wall that people had brought in, and coloring book pages and notes. It looked like she was scoping it out, but she really was taking a moment to herself to just like collect herself and, let some tears fall, because that was the first she'd seen daddy after all of this. And it didn't go well. She left discouraged. I left discouraged, wishing I hadn't done that, but we did it. And I do bring her back one more time, and I'll tell you that story in a minute. Well, probably next time, because it was kind of funny what happened. So it's just things at home are getting sadder and sadder. Not better. Things are getting sadder. And it's getting obvious that, wow, I am going to have to leave with Michael. Because the nearest facility that I could take him was Richmond. And that still is like, mom is up and out of the house. So anyway, all this was coming. Everything was a big question mark. I would let the kids take turns sleeping in my bed at night with me because they needed comfort too. And all three of them would kind of just split time, snuggling in bed at night with me. And this one particular evening, I was just exhausted from the hospital. And this is like probably 10 p.m., 11 p.m. at night. And I remember getting in bed and Brooks was next to me and he saw me writing in my journal and asked me what I was doing. And I told him, hey, yeah, I'm journaling what happened today so that Daddy can know and he can see you came to visit him. And Brooks goes, Mommy, can we just pray that Daddy walks tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, let's pray. So I just set down my book and just turned to him and we just prayed, Lord, would you help Daddy to walk the next day? And I remember just feeling like this warmth and this peace just descend upon me, and kind of like a big warm blanket was laid across me and Brooks. And it just felt like comfort from the Lord. And now, did Michael get up and walk the next day? No, not exactly. He did actually. The next day was the first day that he stood up from his hospital bed with the help of his physical therapist. And he stood to his feet and he stood there for like minutes at a time. So that was pretty cool. But that sweet moment with me and Brooks, if that gives you any idea of how me and the kids were just like in this tender place at home. Yeah, it was a lot. And there were a lot of late nights at the hospital where we'd share funny stories, those of us sitting around Michael's bed, and everybody would take turns trying to get Michael to eat because he had passed a swallow test. They wanted to stop using the feeding tube, but he had to be able to eat. And like towards the end of February, it was finally upgraded to be able to have pureed foods, but he would not eat it. And now none of us can blame him because that food is nasty, but he wouldn't eat. And he was a pill, and his dear friends would like feed him just like you feed toddlers sitting in a high chair. Yeah. So, I mean, like I just have visions of sitting there on the couch watching like Jay feed him as if it was a toddler, and being like, wow, how did we come to this? Like, Lord Jesus, let us move on from this place, please. And it eventually comes. More in Atlanta with the story that I will continue with next time. But these weeks were filled with me relying on all of you, my family and my friends, to get me and my children through it all. And I'm just so grateful because some of the worst days were happening, and some of the worst days were still ahead of me. But I wasn't alone, and I knew that. I had no doubt that I wasn't alone. So grateful for you all. Yeah, I will pick up in the next couple episodes with what our time getting to Atlanta was like. It was rough. So anyhow, thanks for listening. I will see you here next time on my podcast. Bye, friends.